Dara Owusu thought the worst part of losing her soul studio would be starting over. She was wrong. The worst part was discovering that the quiet stranger who'd watched her sketch in a cafe for 40 minutes without saying a word now owned her entire building. And when she confronted him about the eviction notice, Kang Jasu did something that made her blood freeze. He smiled, stepped closer, and blocked her only way out. "Dinner. Tomorrow at 8 p.m., stubborn girl," he said, like he was discussing the weather. Like he hadn't just turned her whole world upside down with 3 simple words that sounded more like a command than an invitation. The cafe in Yeonnam-dong buzzed with afternoon energy, but Dara Owusu heard none of it. Her noise-canceling headphones blocked out the world while she sketched furiously in her leather notebook. Fabric swatches were scattered across the small table like colorful confetti, each one pinned to a different design. Her cold Americano sat forgotten, ice melting into watery disappointment. 3 years in Seoul, and this corner table had become her second office. The staff knew her order by heart. The regulars nodded politely but never interrupted. It was perfect. Until today. A shadow fell across her sketchbook. Dara didn't look up. Shadows came and went. People were always looking for empty seats during lunch rush. The shadow didn't move. She pressed her pencil harder against the paper, adding sharp lines to a jacket collar. Still, the presence lingered. Finally, she glanced up with the practiced expression of someone who dealt with interruptions for a living. A man stood beside her table, tall, wearing a black coat that looked expensive without trying too hard. His face was the kind that belonged in Korean dramas, all sharp angles and serious expressions. Behind him stood another man, clearly waiting for orders. The second man stepped forward. "Miss, our employer would like to use this table for a private meeting." Dara's eyebrows rose. She pulled one side of her headphones off. "Excuse me? The table, miss. We need it for business." "No." The word came out flat and final. Dara slipped her headphones back on and returned to her sketch. The jacket needed buttons, maybe silver ones. The first man, the one who hadn't spoken, moved closer. Without invitation or apology, he slid into the chair across from her. Dara's pencil stopped moving. She looked up again, this time with genuine surprise. In 3 years of cafe work, no one had ever just sat down at her table. Korean courtesy was usually ironclad. The man folded his hands on the table and simply looked at her. Not at her sketches, not at the colorful chaos of fabric samples, not even at the half-melted Americano. Just at her. It should have been uncomfortable. It should have been creepy. Instead, it was oddly calming, like being studied by someone who actually saw details instead of just looking. Dara made a decision. If he wanted to sit, he could sit. But she had work to finish. She returned to her sketching. Minutes passed. The man didn't move, didn't order coffee, didn't check his phone like every other person in Seoul did when sitting still for more than 30 seconds. He just watched her work with the patience of someone who had nowhere else to be. The second man, still standing, shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, perhaps we should wait outside, Hyunwoo." The first words he'd spoken. His voice was lower than Dara expected, with the kind of careful pronunciation that came from expensive education and international experience. Hyunwoo hesitated, then bowed slightly and left. Now it was just the two of them. Dara found herself sketching more carefully, aware of being observed by someone who might actually understand what he was looking at. The jacket collar got softer lines. The buttons became more detailed. 20 minutes passed, then 30, 40. The stranger never moved, never spoke, never even ordered a drink. He simply existed in the space across from her, present without being intrusive. Finally, Dara's phone buzzed with a text from her assistant, Afua. 3 fittings this afternoon. Don't be late with exclamation points and crying, laughing emojis. She closed her sketchbook, gathered her fabric samples, and started packing up. The man across from her watched this process with the same focused attention he'd given her drawing. As she stood to leave, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a black business card. No words, no explanation. He simply placed it face down on her closed sketchbook. Then he was gone. Dara stared at the card for a full minute before flipping it over. KJ Holdings, Kang Jisoo, CEO. She'd never heard of KJ Holdings. She tucked the card between the pages of her sketchbook and headed back to her studio. Hey there, beautiful people. If you're already hooked by this mysterious cafe encounter, drop a heart in the comments and hit that subscribe button because this story is about to get incredibly intense. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when Dara discovers who this quiet stranger really is. 2 weeks later, Dara stood in the narrow hallway of her studio building, staring at an official notice taped to her door. The Korean text swam before her eyes as she read it once, twice, 3 times. 90 days to vacate. Building sold. New development planned. No, she whispered, ripping the notice off the door. Her hands shook as she fumbled with her keys. Void Studio was everything she'd built in Seoul. 2 rooms on the 3rd floor of an aging building in Mapo-gu, rent cheap enough for a startup designer, light good enough for detailed work. She'd painted the walls herself, installed the cutting tables, and talked the landlord into letting her knock down the wall between the 2 rooms. Afua looked up from her sewing machine as Dara burst through the door, notice clutched in her fist. What happened? You look like someone died. Someone did. Us. Look at this. Afua, her best friend since art school, and the most practical person Dara knew, read the notice with growing alarm. 90 days? That's nothing. Where are we supposed to go in 90 days? I don't know. Dara sank into her desk chair, suddenly exhausted. I don't know anything about Korean real estate law. I don't know how much notice they're legally required to give. I don't even know who bought the building. Well, let's find out. Afua was already at Dara's laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard. What's the new owner's name on the notice? Some company called. Dara squinted at the Korean characters. Something Holdings. The Korean is too formal for me to read properly. Got it. KJ Holdings. Afua's typing slowed. Huh, that's interesting. What's interesting? KJ Holdings just bought like 6 buildings in this neighborhood in the past month, all small creative spaces, all getting development notices. Afua turned the laptop screen toward Dara. Look at this. They're planning some kind of luxury complex. Shopping, restaurants, high-end apartments. Dara's stomach dropped. They're gentrifying the whole area. Looks like it. And we're in their way. That evening, Dara sat on her apartment floor with her laptop, a cup of ramyeon, and a growing sense of dread. The internet told her everything and nothing about KJ Holdings. Real estate acquisitions, import-export logistics, private security services, corporate consulting, legitimate businesses, all of them. But there was something about the company that felt too clean, too careful, like a resume with no personality. She scrolled through news articles, business filings, property records. KJ Holdings had appeared seemingly overnight 5 years ago and grown rapidly. Their CEO, Kang Jisoo, had no social media presence and appeared in exactly 0 photos in any of the business articles about his company. Wait. Dara stopped scrolling. She opened her sketchbook and pulled out the black business card from 2 weeks ago. Kang Jisoo, CEO KJ Holdings. The quiet man from the cafe owned her building. The next morning, Dara stood outside Void Studio at 7 a.m., waiting. If Kang Jisoo wanted her building, he could explain it to her face. She didn't have to wait long. At exactly 8:30, a black sedan pulled up outside the building. Kang Jisoo stepped out, followed by Hyunwoo. They walked toward the building entrance like they owned it, which, technically, they did. Mr. Kang. He stopped at the sound of his name. When he turned and saw Dara, something shifted in his expression. Not surprise, exactly. More like recognition of an inevitable moment. Miss Owusu. So he knew her name. Interesting. We need to talk. Yes, we do. Hyunwoo stepped forward. Sir, your 9 o'clock meeting. Reschedule it. Jisoo's eyes never left Dara's face. How long do you need? 5 minutes should cover it. Take 10. They climbed the 3 flights to her studio in silence. Dara's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her expression neutral. Never show weakness in negotiations, her father had taught her. Make them think you have more cards than you're playing. At her studio door, she turned to face him. Are you going to tell me why the man who sat silently in a cafe for 40 minutes, buying my building? Business opportunity. That's not an answer. Jisoo looked around the narrow hallway, taking in the scuffed walls and flickering fluorescent lights. May I see your workspace? It wasn't really a question. Dara unlocked the door and stepped aside. He entered Void Studio like he was conducting an inspection. His gaze moved over her cutting tables, her fabric wall, the half-finished pieces hanging on dress forms. He stopped at her design wall, covered in sketches and color swatches and inspiration photos. You've been here 2 years. Yes. Your lease is month to month. Yes. No security deposit. Minimal improvements clause. Landlord can terminate with 60 days' notice. Dara's jaw tightened. He'd read her lease. You've done your research. I always do my research. He turned away from the design wall to face her. Your work is impressive. Thank you. Now, answer my question. Why did you buy this building? Investment potential. This neighborhood is undervalued. And you're going to fix that by kicking out all the artists and small business owners who made it interesting in the first place. Something flickered across his face. Development creates opportunity. For who? Not for people like me. I could extend your lease privately, separate from the development timeline. The offer hung in the air between them. Dara studied his expression, looking for the catch. There was always a catch. What would you want in return? Nothing. Nobody gives something for nothing, especially not real estate developers. I'm not asking for anything in return. Then why offer? He was quiet for a long moment, looking around her studio again. You should be working somewhere better than this. I like it here. The lighting is poor. The heating barely works. The building has no security. It's mine. It could still be yours, just improved. Dara shook her head. I don't take favors from men I don't know. What would you need to know? The question caught her off guard. Excuse me. To accept help. What would you need to know about me? Everything. And that's not happening in one conversation. Jisoo nodded, like her answer made perfect sense. Then we'll have more conversations. No, we won't. Dara moved toward the door, holding it open. Thank you for the offer, Mr. Kang, but I'll handle this situation myself. He walked past her toward the door, then paused. How? Excuse me? Your lease expires in 90 days. Finding new studio space in Seoul takes months, assuming you can afford market rates. How will you handle this yourself? The question hit harder than it should have. Dara had spent the previous night running numbers, calling landlords, checking her savings account. The reality was brutal. She couldn't afford anything comparable to her current space, and everything available was either too small, too expensive, or both. I'll figure it out. I'm sure you will. He handed her another black business card. When you do, call me. After he left, Dara sank into her desk chair and put her head in her hands. Afua found her there 20 minutes later. How did it go? He offered to let me stay. That's great news. I said no. Afua stared at her. You said no to keeping our studio. I said no to accepting favors from mysterious real estate developers who sit uninvited at cafe tables and somehow know my name without me telling them. Okay, that is weird. But Dara, we need this space. I know. I need to think. That afternoon, Dara did what she always did when she needed to think. She went back to the cafe. Same corner table, same cold Americano, same headphones. But instead of sketching, she stared at the black business card and tried to figure out who Kang Jae-soo really was. The internet still told her nothing useful. KJ Holdings had an impressive portfolio, but no personality. Kang Jae-soo had business credentials, but no personal history. It was like trying to research a ghost. She was so absorbed in her laptop screen that she didn't notice someone approaching until a familiar voice said, "May I?" Jae-soo stood beside her table again, but this time he waited for permission. Dara looked around the cafe. Every other table was occupied. It's a free country. He sat down and folded his hands on the table, just like before. But this time, instead of watching her work, he waited for her to speak. "I researched you," she said finally. "I assumed you would. I didn't find much. Most people don't. Why is that? I value privacy." Dara closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair. "In my experience, people who value privacy that much usually have something to hide. In my experience, people who assume the worst are usually disappointed by the truth. What is the truth? I'm a businessman who saw something interesting and wanted to understand it better." Something interesting? Someone interesting. The words hung between them, loaded with implication. Dara felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her expression neutral. "And now that you've understood it? I'd like to understand more." Dara pulled a folded piece of paper from her bag and slid it across the table. "Then here's what you need to understand." Jae-soo unfolded the paper. His eyebrows rose slightly as he read. "A counterproposal? Market rate analysis, 5-year lease terms, improvement clauses that benefit both parties. I don't need charity, Mr. Kang, but I'm willing to negotiate a fair business arrangement." He studied the document for several minutes, reading every line carefully. "You prepared this overnight?" "I prepare for everything." "The terms are reasonable?" "They're more than reasonable. They're generous." "Why?" "Because I want to stay in my studio, and you want to develop that building. This way, we both get what we want without anyone owing anyone favors." Jae-soo folded the paper and tucked it into his coat pocket. "I'll review this with my legal team." "How long will that take?" "A week. 3 days. That's not enough time for proper legal review." "Then maybe your legal team needs to work faster." For the first time since she'd met him, Jae-soo smiled. Not a polite business smile, but something genuine that transformed his entire face. 3 days, he agreed. He stood to leave, then turned back. "Dinner. Tomorrow at 8 p.m. Dara blinked. "What?" "To discuss the counterproposal. Dinner. Tomorrow at 8. I don't do business over dinner." "It's not business." The words hit her like a small earthquake. She was standing before she realized it, her chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me." Jae-soo was already walking toward the exit. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no, never being questioned, never being challenged. At the cafe door, he paused. The afternoon sun backlit his frame, and for a moment he looked less like a businessman and more like something out of the Korean dramas Ifua was always watching. When he turned back to look at her, his expression was different. Softer around the edges, but somehow more intense. "Dinner. Tomorrow at 8 p.m. Stubborn girl." The words were quiet, almost fond, but they carried across the entire cafe. Other customers turned to look. The barista paused mid-order. Dara froze. Not because of the attention, though her cheeks burned with embarrassment. Not because of the presumption, though part of her wanted to march over there and tell him exactly what she thought about men who issued dinner invitations like royal decrees. She froze because of the way he was looking at her, like she was a puzzle he was still trying to solve, a book written in a language he was determined to learn, like she was worth the effort. The cafe door closed behind him with a soft chime, and Dara sank back into her chair. Her hands were shaking slightly as she reached for her Americano. Around her, the other customers gradually returned to their conversations. The barista went back to making coffee. The world continued spinning, but something had shifted. Something that felt dangerous and exciting and completely outside her control. Her phone buzzed with a text from Afua. "How's the research going?" Dara stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "I think I'm in trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where you say yes to dinner with mysterious businessmen, even though every rational part of your brain is screaming at you to run. Oh my God. Details, now." Dara looked around the cafe one more time, half expecting to see Jisoo still standing by the door. But he was gone, leaving behind only the memory of his voice saying, "Stubborn girl," like it was something precious. She packed up her laptop and headed home, her mind already spinning with questions she didn't know how to answer, like what she would wear to dinner tomorrow, and whether she was brave enough to show up at all. Dara told herself 15 different reasons why she shouldn't go to dinner with Kang Jisoo. He was too mysterious, too presumptuous, too dangerous in ways she couldn't define. She had work to finish, emails to answer, a business to save. She told herself all of this while standing in front of her closet at 7:15, holding up different outfits like her life depended on the choice. "The black dress," Afua called from the living room, where she was pretending to watch television instead of eavesdropping on Dara's fashion crisis. "I didn't ask for your opinion." "You've been muttering about colors for 20 minutes. The black dress with the asymmetrical hem, the one you made for the art gallery opening." Dara looked at the dress in question. It was one of her better pieces, sophisticated, but not trying too hard, with interesting details that revealed themselves slowly. The kind of outfit that said she belonged anywhere she chose to be. "This isn't a date," she called back. "Sure it's not. That's why you've changed your mind about going 17 times in the past hour." Dara pulled on the black dress and checked herself in the mirror. The fit was perfect, because she'd designed it specifically for her body. The fabric moved like water when she walked. It was armor disguised as elegance. If she was walking into Kang Jisoo's world, she was walking in as herself. She arrived at the restaurant 30 minutes late, deliberately. If he wanted to play power games by issuing dinner invitations like commands, she could play power games by showing up on her own schedule. The hostess led her through a restaurant that whispered expensive without screaming about it. Low lighting, fresh flowers, the kind of quiet that only came when every customer could afford to be there. Jisoo sat at a corner table, back to the wall, perfect view of the entire room. He wasn't checking his phone or looking at his watch or showing any sign of impatience. He simply sat, hands folded, like he had all the time in the world. When he saw her approaching, he stood. The gesture surprised her. Korean men were generally polite, but there was something old-fashioned about the way he waited for her to sit before taking his own seat. "You're late," he observed, but there was no annoyance in his voice. "I'm exactly as late as I intended to be." Which was? Late enough to make a point, not late enough to be rude. He smiled at that, the same genuine expression that had surprised her in the cafe. "And what point were you making?" "That I don't jump when strange men snap their fingers." "Noted." He poured water into her glass from a bottle she hadn't seen him order. "Are you always this direct? Are you always this presumptuous?" "Yes." The honesty caught her off guard. Most people would have deflected or made excuses. "Well, at least you're honest about it." I find honesty saves time. A server appeared beside their table like he'd been waiting for some invisible signal. Jisoo ordered in Korean too rapid and formal for Dara to follow completely, but she caught enough to know he was ordering for both of them without asking what she wanted. "Excuse me," she said to the server in her careful Korean. "I'll have the bibimbap and a glass of the house white wine, please." The server looked between them uncertainly. Jisoo nodded slightly, and the man hurried away. "You ordered for me," Dara said. "I canceled my order when you gave yours. Why did you order from me in the first place? Habit. Do you often have dinner with women who let you order for them?" "No." "Then where did the habit come from?" Jisoo was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Business dinners. I'm usually the one paying, so I handle the ordering. This isn't a business dinner." "No, it's not." The admission hung between them, loaded with possibility. Dara felt her pulse quicken and forced herself to breathe normally. "Then what is it?" "A conversation between two people who find each other interesting." "And you find me interesting because—" "You're the first person in years who's told me no 3 times in one day." Dara laughed before she could stop herself. "That's your criteria for interesting? People who disagree with you? People who aren't afraid to disagree with me?" There was something behind the words, a shadow of weariness that made her wonder how many people in his life said yes automatically, without thinking. Their food arrived, and they ate in surprisingly comfortable silence. Dara had expected awkwardness, but conversation flowed easily between them. He asked about her design process. She asked about his business philosophy. Neither of them mentioned the building, or her counter-proposal, or the fact that her future was currently in his hands. "How long have you been in Seoul?" he asked over dessert. 3 years. You?" "I was born here. But you lived somewhere else." It wasn't a question. His English was too perfect, his mannerisms too international. "London for university, New York for business school, Singapore for 2 years after that." "What brought you back?" "Family obligations." The way he said it suggested the topic was closed. Dara filed the information away and moved on. "Do you enjoy what you do?" "Usually." "What about now? Do you enjoy buying buildings and displacing small businesses?" "No." Again, the simple honesty. "Then why do it?" "Because the alternative is someone else buying those buildings and displacing those businesses anyway, but with less consideration for the current tenants." "So, you're the better option." "I'm an option that remembers people worked hard to build what they have." Dara studied his face, looking for signs of deception. "Is that why you offered to extend my lease?" "Part of the reason." "What's the other part?" "I told you. You're interesting." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I have right now." The server brought the check without being asked. Jisoo paid with a black card that had no visible logos or bank names, the kind of financial instrument that suggested resources beyond normal understanding. "Thank you for dinner," Dara said as they walked toward the restaurant exit. "Thank you for coming. Even late." "Especially late." He smiled at that. Especially late. Outside, Seoul glittered around them like a circuit board. Traffic moved in streams of light, and somewhere in the distance, music drifted from a late-night food market. "Can I drive you home?" Jisoo asked. "I'll take the subway." "It's after 10. I've been taking the subway after 10 for 3 years. Not with me worrying about whether you got home safely." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Dara saw the moment he realized what he'd said, the slight tightening around his eyes. "Are you worried about me, Mr. Kang?" "Yes." "Why?" "I don't know." She believed him. That was the dangerous part. "I'll text you when I get home." "You don't have my number." "Then give it to me." He pulled out his phone, and they went through the careful ritual of exchanging contact information. His number had more digits than a normal Korean phone number, probably something international and complicated. "Good night, Dara." Her name and his voice sounded different than it did when other people said it. Softer somehow, Good night, Jisoo. She walked toward the subway station without looking back, but she could feel him watching until she disappeared around the corner. True to her word, she texted him when she got home. Just arrived safely. His response came immediately. Thank you. Then, a moment later, I enjoyed dinner. Dara stared at her phone screen, cursor blinking in the reply box. She typed and deleted a dozen different responses before settling on. Me too. 3 days later, Jisoo called her at exactly 9 a.m. Your counter-proposal is acceptable. Dara nearly dropped her coffee. All of it? All of it. My lawyers want to add a few clauses about property improvements and maintenance responsibilities, but the basic terms are exactly what you outlined. Thank you. This is business, Dara. Don't thank me for agreeing to reasonable terms. But she could hear the satisfaction in his voice, like he'd enjoyed saying yes to something she wanted. When can we sign? Today, if you're available. My office at 2 p.m. I'll be there. And Dara? Yes? Bring Afua. She should understand what you're agreeing to. The fact that he knew Ifua's name should have been alarming. Instead, Dara found it oddly comforting. He'd been paying attention. KJ Holdings occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in Gangnam, the kind of building that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought geometry was a competitive sport. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with a security desk that probably had better technology than most government buildings. Afua whistled low as they rode the elevator to the 15th floor. This is some serious business, Dara. I know. I mean, this is like conglomerate-level serious business. I know. And you had dinner with the CEO. Afua, just making sure you know. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that managed to be impressive without being intimidating. Modern furniture, good art, windows that showed half of Seoul spread out below like a map of possibilities. Hyunwoo met them at reception, the same polite efficiency he'd shown at the cafe and the studio. Miss Owusu, Miss Asante, Mr. Kang is waiting for you in the conference room. He led them down a hallway lined with offices where people worked quietly at computers, making the kind of money that let them dress well and speak softly. Everyone they passed bowed politely to Hyunwoo, but Dara noticed the extra respect in their posture when he mentioned Mr. Kang's name. The conference room had a view that made Afua actually gasp. Seoul stretched away in every direction, buildings climbing toward mountains, rivers threading between districts like silver ribbons. Jisoo stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, looking out at the city like he was considering buying it. Ladies. He turned when they entered, that same careful politeness he'd shown at dinner. Please, sit. Can I offer you anything? Coffee? Tea? Water? Coffee would be great, Afua said, clearly trying not to stare at the view. Dara? I'm fine, thank you. Hyunwoo left to arrange coffee, and Jisoo took a seat across from them. The conference table was large enough for 12 people, but he sat directly across from Dara, close enough for normal conversation. Before we review the contract, he said, I want you to understand something. This agreement protects your studio for 5 years, but it doesn't solve your long-term space problem. What do you mean? 5 years from now, you'll need to move again. This building will be part of a larger development by then, and your studio won't fit the new use patterns. Afua frowned. Are you trying to talk us out of signing? I'm trying to make sure you understand what you're signing. This buys you time, not permanence. Dara leaned back in her chair, studying his expression. What are you suggesting? That you think about what you want Void Studio to become. This 5-year lease gives you time to plan for something bigger. Bigger how? Jisoo pressed a button on the table, and a screen descended from the ceiling. Images appeared. Architectural renderings, neighborhood maps, development timelines. Seong Su-dong, he said. We're developing a mixed-use complex there. Retail, restaurants, creative office space. There's a location that would work perfectly for a flagship fashion studio. The renderings were beautiful. Modern spaces with incredible light, high ceilings, enough room for proper showrooms and workshops. The kind of studio Dara had dreamed about but never thought she could afford. What would something like this cost? Afua asked, because Dara seemed to have lost the ability to speak. For the right tenant, we could structure a lease that works with their growth projections. The right tenant being? Someone whose work deserves a space this good. Dara found her voice. You're offering me this. I'm offering you the opportunity to consider it. The timeline works with your current lease. You could build Void Studio into something that matches your vision instead of just what you can afford. The images on the screen were everything she'd wanted. Professional kitchen for events, proper storage, separate spaces for design and production and client meetings. It was perfect, which meant there had to be a catch. What would you want in return? Market rate rent, structured to increase as your business grows. A lease that benefits both of us long term. That's it? That's it. Afua kicked her under the table, the universal signal for accept this ridiculous good fortune before he changes his mind. But Dara couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something important. Why me? Excuse me. You could offer this space to any established fashion house in Seoul, companies with international recognition and guaranteed revenue streams. Why offer it to a 3-year-old startup run by a foreign designer most people haven't heard of? Jisoo was quiet for a long moment, looking at the renderings still displayed on the screen. Because those established fashion houses don't create anything new. They follow trends, they play it safe, they make clothes for people who already have too many clothes. He looked back at her. Your work is different. Different how? Honest. You design clothes for people who need them to mean something. The observation hit deeper than she expected. Dara had always thought of her work in terms of technique and aesthetics, but he was right. She designed for people like herself, who used fashion to navigate between worlds, to belong and stand out simultaneously. Hey, beautiful people. I hope you're getting those butterfly feelings, because this tension is about to get even more intense. If you're loving this slow burn romance, smash that like button and let me know in the comments what you think Dara should do. Should she trust Jisoo, or is this all too good to be true? How long do I have to decide? Take the time you need. The Seongsu-dong project won't be ready for tenant improvements for 6 months anyway. Afua was practically vibrating with excitement, but Dara felt overwhelmed. Too many changes too fast, too many decisions that felt bigger than just business. Can I see the actual space? Of course. When would work for you? Tomorrow. I'll pick you up at 10. After they signed the studio lease extension. After Afua stopped crying with relief. After they left the gleaming KJ Holdings building and rode the subway back to their neighborhood. Dara sat in her studio, looking around at the space she'd just fought to keep. It felt smaller now. Not physically, but in terms of possibility. Like she'd been thinking about Void Studio in miniature when she should have been thinking in full scale. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jisoo. Thank you for trusting me with your business. She stared at the message for a long time before responding. Thank you for seeing what it could become. His reply came quickly. I see what you could become too. The words sent heat through her chest, dangerous and exciting. She turned off her phone without responding and tried to focus on the sketches in front of her. But her mind kept drifting to architectural renderings and the way Jisoo had said honest, like it was something rare and valuable. The next morning, he picked her up in a car that managed to be expensive without being flashy. Black, clean lines, the kind of vehicle that could disappear in traffic, despite probably costing more than most people's apartments. Good morning, he said as she settled into the passenger seat. Morning. You're very punctual. You're very observant. The drive to Seongsu-dong took them through parts of Seoul Dara rarely visited, industrial areas that were slowly transforming into trendy creative districts, old warehouses converted to galleries, abandoned factories turned into startup incubators. This whole neighborhood is changing, she observed. Change is inevitable. The question is whether it happens thoughtfully or carelessly. And you're the thoughtful option? I try to be. The building site was still mostly construction, but Dara could see the bones of something impressive. Good proportions, interesting angles, integration with the existing neighborhood character. Jisoo led her through the space that would become her studio, pointing out features and possibilities. Natural light from 3 directions, high ceilings, perfect for large installations, separate areas for different functions. The kitchen could go here, he said, standing in what was currently just concrete and exposed pipes. Proper ventilation, enough space for catering events. You think I should be hosting events? I think you should be doing whatever helps people understand your work. They spent 2 hours walking through the space, discussing layouts and possibilities. Jisoo had clearly thought about this more than she had, with suggestions that showed he understood both fashion and business. There's something else, he said as they prepared to leave. What? Seoul Fashion Week is next month. There's an emerging designers showcase on the second night. I know. The application deadline was months ago. Someone dropped out yesterday. There's an opening. Dara felt her pulse spike. Seoul Fashion Week was exactly the kind of exposure Void Studio needed, but getting selected was nearly impossible for unknown designers. Are you offering me the spot? I'm offering to recommend you. The decision would be up to the selection committee. Why would they listen to your recommendation? KJ Holdings is one of the event sponsors. Of course they were. Dara was beginning to realize that Jisoo's influence in Seoul extended far beyond real estate. What would I need to do? Submit a portfolio and a collection concept by Friday. If they accept you, you'd have 3 weeks to prepare for the show. 3 weeks to prepare for Seoul Fashion Week. It was impossible. It was also the opportunity she'd been working toward for 3 years. I'll submit the portfolio. Good, he smiled, and for a moment he looked less like a powerful businessman and more like someone who genuinely wanted to see her succeed. You belong on that stage, Dara. They drove back toward her neighborhood in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. At a red light, Dara noticed Jisoo's hands on the steering wheel. Long fingers, no rings, small scar across his left knuckle. How did you get that scar? He glanced down at his hand, surprised by the question. Childhood accident. I was 7. Tried to climb a fence I shouldn't have climbed. Were you always this determined to get where you weren't supposed to be? Yes. The simple honesty made her smile. At least you're consistent. What about you? Any childhood scars with interesting stories? Dara showed him a small mark on her wrist. Sewing machine accident when I was 12. I was trying to make a dress for my doll and got too ambitious with the sleeves. Were you always this determined to make beautiful things? Yes. Consistent. They were flirting, she realized. Actually flirting. Like 2 normal people who found each other attractive instead of a mysterious businessman and the designer whose fate he controlled. It should have felt weird. Instead, it felt natural. When he dropped her off at her studio, he didn't immediately drive away. Dara? She turned back toward the car. Good luck with the portfolio, though I don't think you'll need luck. What will I need? Just be yourself. That's more than enough. 3 weeks later, Dara stood backstage at Seoul Fashion Week, surrounded by controlled chaos. Models rushed between racks of clothes. Makeup artists touched up faces under harsh lighting, and the air buzzed with nervous energy that felt like electricity before a storm. 2 minutes to showtime, a production assistant called out. Dara's hands shook slightly as she made final adjustments to a jacket sleeve. 3 weeks of 16-hour days, emergency fabric orders, and stress-induced insomnia had led to this moment. "You look like you're about to throw up," Afua observed, appearing beside her with a safety pin and infinite calm. "I feel like I'm about to throw up." "Don't. You'll ruin the makeup." The collection was good. Dara knew it was good. 7 pieces that told a story about belonging and transformation, about finding yourself in spaces where you weren't expected to fit. The kind of clothes that made the wearer feel powerful and beautiful simultaneously. But knowing your work was good and having 300 fashion industry professionals agree were entirely different things. "Places, everyone!" The models lined up, each one transformed into a different version of Dara's vision. Strong shoulders, flowing lines, colors that shifted between cultures like visual music. From the wings, Dara could see the audience settling into their seats. Fashion editors, buyers, influencers, everyone who mattered in Seoul's style ecosystem. In the 3rd row, Jisoo sat perfectly still, hands folded, looking like he belonged anywhere he chose to be. When their eyes met across the crowd, he nodded once, not encouraging, not nervous for her, just confident, like her success was already decided. The music started. The first model stepped onto the runway, and Dara held her breath. By the 4th piece, she knew something special was happening. The audience had gone quiet in the way that meant they were actually watching instead of just waiting for their turn to be seen. Phones came out to capture details instead of selfies. By the 7th piece, buyers were taking notes. When the final model completed her walk and the music faded, the silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then applause erupted, genuine and sustained, the kind that meant people had been moved by what they'd seen. Dara walked onto the runway on legs that felt like water, bowing to an audience that was standing now, clapping for work that represented everything she'd built in Seoul. In the 3rd row, Jisoo stood with everyone else, but he wasn't clapping. He was smiling, the kind of expression that said he'd known this would happen all along. After the show, Dara was surrounded by business cards and congratulations and interview requests. Fashion Week was a business, and suddenly everyone wanted to do business with her. "Miss Owusu?" A woman with perfect hair and an expensive notebook appeared at her elbow. "Lee Min-hee from Fashion Forward magazine. Could I ask you a few questions about your inspiration for this collection?" "Of course. The pieces feel very personal. Are they drawn from your own experience as a foreign designer in Seoul?" "Partly. But I think everyone has experience feeling like an outsider sometimes. These clothes are for people who want to belong without disappearing." "And how has the Korean fashion industry supported your work?" "The creative community here has been incredibly welcoming. Seoul has room for voices from everywhere." "What about business support? I understand you have some high-profile backing for your studio expansion." Something in the woman's tone made Dara careful with her answer. "I'm grateful for the opportunity to grow my business, but the designs speak for themselves." "Of course. Could you comment on your relationship with Kang Jisoo?" The question hit like cold water. Dara kept her expression neutral, but her mind raced. How did a fashion journalist know about Jisoo? "Mr. Kang is my landlord." "Just your landlord?" "I don't discuss my personal relationships in professional interviews." "Understood. Thank you for your time." The journalist disappeared into the crowd, leaving Dara with a growing sense of unease. Something about the conversation felt wrong, like she'd stepped into a trap without seeing it. Later, at the after-party in a rooftop bar that overlooked the Han River, Dara tried to shake off her worry. The night was perfect, warm enough for the outdoor terrace, clear enough to see stars above the city lights. "You did it," Afua said, appearing beside her with champagne and a huge grin. "You actually did it. Seoul Fashion Week. Sold-out show. Buyers fighting over orders. It doesn't feel real yet. It's real. Look around. Dara looked. Fashion editors were still talking about her collection. Buyers were asking about availability timelines. Other designers were congratulating her with genuine enthusiasm instead of polite competition. Miss Owusu? She turned to find a man in his 50s, well-dressed in the way that suggested old money rather than new success. Yes? Kwon Dae-sung. I run a fashion investment fund here in Seoul. He handed her a business card made from heavy paper. I'd love to discuss some opportunities with you. What kind of opportunities? Expansion capital, international distribution partnerships, the kind of support that could take Void Studio global within 2 years. It was exactly what every designer dreamed of hearing. Dara should have been excited. Instead, she felt cautious. That's very generous, Mr. Kwon. Smart business recognizes smart business, though I understand you already have some backing from KJ Holdings. There was something in the way he said Jisoo's company name, like he was testing her reaction. Mr. Kang has been supportive of local creative businesses. Supportive? Interesting word choice. Kwon's smile didn't reach his eyes. Well, if you ever want to discuss alternatives, please call me. I think you'll find my terms quite competitive. He melted back into the crowd, leaving Dara with another business card she didn't particularly want. Who was that? Afua asked. Someone offering to make me rich and famous. And you look worried because nothing is ever that simple. The next morning, Dara woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 unread messages. Her first thought was that something terrible had happened to someone she loved. Her second thought, after reading the first few messages, was that something terrible had happened to her. Fashion Forward magazine's website featured a prominent article with her photo from the runway show. The headline read, "Seoul's Rising Star, Talent or Connection?" Dara's hands shook as she read. Dara Owusu's impressive Fashion Week debut raises questions about merit versus patronage in Seoul's fashion scene. While her designs show obvious talent, industry insiders note the rapid rise of Void Studio coincides with support from powerful businessman Kang Jisoo, CEO of KJ Holdings. Sources close to the situation suggest Owusu's opportunities may owe more to personal relationships than professional achievement. The article continued with speculation, disguised as reporting, quotes from unnamed sources, and photos of her and Jisoo at the gala, taken from across the room, but cropped to suggest intimacy. Critics wonder whether Owusu's success represents genuine recognition of immigrant talent, or simply another example of influence shaping outcomes in Seoul's insular fashion world. Dara's phone rang. Afua's name appeared on the screen. Have you seen it? I'm reading it now. It's garbage, Dara. Anyone who saw your show knows this is garbage. It doesn't matter what people who saw the show think. It matters what people who didn't see the show think when they read this. Her phone buzzed with another call. Ji Yeon-hee, the fashion editor who had mentored her when she first arrived in Seoul. Dara, darling, I'm so sorry about this nonsense. Is it nonsense? Or is it what everyone was thinking, but too polite to say? Listen to me carefully. Yes, you know Kang Jisoo. Yes, that connection may have opened some doors. But no one could have walked through those doors except you. Your work at Fashion Week was extraordinary, and everyone in this industry knows the difference between talent and charity. But you need to be careful. Someone is trying to undermine you, and they're using your association with Jisoo to do it. Who would do that? Anyone who profits from keeping the fashion world small and exclusive. Anyone who doesn't want to see new voices succeed. After the call ended, Dara sat in her studio surrounded by orders from Fashion Week, emails from international buyers, and proof that her work was connecting with people who understood fashion. None of it mattered if everyone assumed she hadn't earned it. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jisoo. "I've seen the article. We need to talk." She turned off her phone without responding. 3 days later, Jisoo appeared at her studio door. Not with Hyunwoo, not with advance notice, just standing in her hallway like any normal person might. "You haven't been returning my calls." "I've been busy." "Too busy to let me explain." "Explain what? That you have influence in Seoul's fashion industry? I already figured that out." "May I come in?" Dara stepped aside, and he entered Void's studio like he was visiting a museum, careful not to touch anything, respectful of her space. "I didn't speak to that journalist." "I know." "Then why are you avoiding me?" "Because it doesn't matter if you spoke to her or not. The damage is done." Jisoo was quiet for a moment, looking at the wall where she'd pinned up photos from Fashion Week. "Your show was incredible. Was it? Or do you just think it was because you have feelings for me?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Dara hadn't meant to be so direct, but exhaustion had worn down her filters. "Both," he said finally. "It was incredible, and I have feelings for you. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. They are when everyone assumes the second caused the first." "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing. I want you to do nothing. I want you to disappear from my business life so people can see my work without seeing you first." "And personally?" Dara's chest tightened. "There can't be a personally until there's a professionally that I earned myself." "You did earn it yourself." "Prove it." "How?" "By staying away." The words hurt to say, but they needed to be said. Jisoo nodded slowly, like he understood the logic even if he didn't like it. "If that's what you need." "It is." He walked toward the door, then paused. "Dara?" "Yes?" "Be careful. Someone is trying to damage your reputation, and it's not random. Watch your back." After he left, Dara sank into her desk chair and put her head in her hands. She'd just sent away the most interesting man she'd met in years, but it felt necessary, like amputating something infected to save the whole. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Lunch tomorrow. We should discuss those opportunities I mentioned. Kwon De-sung." She stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without responding. 2 weeks later, things got worse. Dara arrived at her studio to find the building manager waiting in the lobby, wringing his hands with obvious distress. "Miss Owusu, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but there's been a complaint." "What kind of complaint?" "About noise violations, improper business licensing, safety code violations. The city inspector was here yesterday." Dara's blood chilled. "What did he find?" "Nothing serious, but they're requiring a full compliance review. It could take weeks." "Weeks?" "I'm afraid you'll need to suspend business operations until the review is complete." Back in her studio, Dara stared at official-looking documents written in formal Korean too complex for her to fully understand. Afua translated with growing anger. "This is harassment. Pure harassment. Someone filed complaints they knew would trigger an investigation. Can we fight it?" "Sure, if you want to spend months and thousands of dollars on lawyers while your business dies." Dara's phone rang. Kwon De-sung's name appeared on the screen. "Miss Owusu, I heard about your unfortunate situation with the city compliance office. How did you hear about it so quickly?" "Seoul is a small city in many ways. I might be able to help expedite the review process." "In exchange for?" "A conversation about your future." "And if I'm not interested in a conversation?" "Then I'm afraid the compliance review might take considerably longer than usual." The threat was polite, but unmistakable. Dara felt trapped between impossible choices. "One conversation." "Excellent. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll send you the address." That night, Dara sat in her apartment with a cup of tea and a growing sense of dread. Someone was systematically destroying her business, and she was running out of options. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jisoo. "I know what's happening. Can we talk?" She stared at the message for 20 minutes before responding. "How do you know?" His reply came immediately. "Because I'm dealing with the same person. Kwon Daesung is trying to force you out of business so he can buy your compliance problems and offer you a solution. Why would he do that? To get to me. You're collateral damage in a business dispute." Dara felt sick. Everything that was happening to her was really about someone else's fight. Can you fix it? Not without making things worse for you. But if we work together, we might be able to solve this properly. The next day, Dara met Kwon Daesung in his office in a building that tried too hard to look important. Gold fixtures, marble surfaces, art that was expensive but not interesting. "Thank you for coming," Kwon said, settling behind a desk large enough to land aircraft on. "I think we can help each other." "How?" "Your compliance problems disappear. You receive substantial investment capital. Void Studio expands internationally under my company's guidance. What would you want in return?" "Exclusive rights to your brand development. A partnership agreement that gives my company a controlling interest in Void Studio's future growth." "You want to own my company?" "I want to help your company reach its potential. By taking it away from me. By giving you resources you could never access alone." Dara stood up. "Thank you for the offer, but I'll handle my compliance issues myself." "That would be unfortunate. For you and for your friend, Mr. Kang." "What does Jisoo have to do with this?" "Kang Jisoo has been very aggressive in acquiring properties I was interested in. Perhaps if he understood how his actions affect people he cares about, he might become more cooperative." The truth hit Dara like a physical blow. This wasn't about her business or her relationship with Jisoo. She was being used as leverage in someone else's war. "You filed the complaints against my studio. Business is competitive, Miss Owusu. You destroyed my reputation with that article." "I have no idea what you mean." His smile was all teeth and no warmth. Dara walked toward the door, then turned back. "You made one mistake, Mr. Kwon." "What's that?" "You assumed I was just collateral damage, but I'm not. I'm someone who builds things, and I'm very good at protecting what I build." That evening, Dara called Jisoo. "I need your help." "Tell me what you need." "I need to understand exactly who Kwon Daesung is and why he's targeting us." "Us?" "Yes, us. Because apparently we're in this together, whether I like it or not." "Are you sure?" "Working with me means everyone will assume." "Everyone already assumes. But now I'm angry enough not to care what they think." They met at a 24-hour cafe in Hongdae, the kind of place where students studied all night, and insomniacs found community. Neutral ground, away from both of their worlds. Jisoo arrived with a folder full of documents and an expression grim enough to worry her. "Kwon Daesung runs an investment fund, but that's not his real business," he began. "He specializes in hostile acquisitions, finds promising small businesses, creates problems for them, then offers solutions that give him control." "How many businesses has he done this to?" "Dozens. Restaurants, galleries, tech startups. He has a pattern. Create financial pressure, offer rescue, take ownership." "And you've been stopping him?" "I've been buying properties he wanted before he could acquire them. It's cost him several major deals." Dara studied the documents. Property records, business filings, a pattern of aggressive expansion disguised as investment. "So he decided to hit you where it would hurt most." "Through you?" "Yes." "What can we do?" "We can give him what he wants." "Which is?" "A public fight with me that makes us both look bad. Or we can give him what he doesn't expect." "What's that?" "A partnership that's stronger than his ability to divide us." Hello, amazing viewers. We're reaching the incredible climax of this story, and I'm getting chills just writing this. The way Dara and Jisoo are finally working together as true partners is giving me all the butterfly feelings. Drop a heart if you're feeling the same way, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because the ending is going to be absolutely perfect. The plan they developed over coffee and determination was simple but risky. Instead of hiding their connection, they would make it public and professional. A joint announcement about Void Studios' expansion into the Seongsu-dong space, with KJ Holdings as the development partner and Dara as the creative director. If we're going to be accused of working together anyway, Dara said, let's make it official and on our terms. The fashion industry will have opinions about this. Let them have opinions. My work speaks for itself. Kwon will try to interfere. Then we'll be ready for him. They spent 3 days preparing. Legal documents that protected both of their interests, press releases that emphasized mutual professional respect, and business projections that showed genuine collaboration rather than patronage. The announcement went live on a Thursday morning. By noon, Dara's phone was buzzing with interview requests, partnership inquiries, and messages of support from designers who respected honest collaboration over hidden influence. By evening, Kwon Dae-sung had made his countermove. Miss Owusu, the building manager called as Dara arrived at her studio. There are men here to see you. They say they're from the tax office. 3 men in official-looking uniforms stood outside Void Studio with clipboards and serious expressions, the kind of visit that meant hours of paperwork and weeks of delays. Dara's phone rang, Jisoo's name on the screen. Don't let them inside without lawyers present. How did you know? Because the same men just left my office. Kwon is escalating. What do? We finish this. Tonight. That evening, Jisoo picked Dara up in the same understated car they'd driven to Seongsu-dong. But this time, the atmosphere was different. Focused, determined, like they were heading into battle together. Where are we going? To see Kwon, with evidence of what he's been doing to small businesses across Seoul. What kind of evidence? Jisoo handed her a tablet loaded with financial records, business correspondence, and documented patterns of harassment. Enough to show that his investment fund is actually an extortion operation. Enough to interest prosecutors. How did you get all this? I have resources. Legal resources? Mostly legal resources. They pulled up outside Kwon's building as the sun set behind the mountains surrounding Seoul. The glass facade reflected the city lights like a mirror, beautiful and cold. In the elevator to Kwon's office, Jisoo took Dara's hand. Whatever happens in there, remember that we're partners now. Equal partners. Equal partners who happen to care about each other. Yes. The elevator doors opened, and they walked into Kwon Dae-sung's territory together. Kwon was waiting in his office with 2 assistants and a lawyer. His smile was confident until he saw the tablet in Dara's hands. Mr. Kang. Miss Owusu. This is unexpected. Mr. Kwon, Jisoo said, settling into a chair like he owned the building. We're here to discuss your business practices. I'm not sure what you mean. Dara opened the tablet and began reading. 12 small businesses forced into bankruptcy after mysterious compliance issues. 8 restaurants that lost their licenses due to anonymous complaints. 6 galleries that couldn't renew their leases due to sudden policy changes. Business is competitive. Business is competitive, Jisoo agreed. Extortion is criminal. You're making serious accusations without evidence. We have evidence. Dara turned the tablet screen toward him. Financial records showing payments to city inspectors. Email correspondence about complaint coordination. Recorded phone calls discussing target businesses. Kwon's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. What do you want? An end to harassment of Void Studio and any other creative businesses in Seoul, Dara said. Withdrawal of all compliance complaints and tax reviews filed in the past month, Jisoo added. And? Nothing else. We're not interested in destroying you, Mr. Kwon. We're interested in building things without interference. Kwon studied their faces, looking for weakness or negotiation points. He found neither. And if I don't agree? Then this evidence goes to the prosecutor's office tomorrow morning, Dara said, along with testimony from 12 business owners who are tired of being intimidated. You're bluffing. Try me. The silence stretched between them like a wire under tension. Finally, Kwon nodded to his lawyer. Draft the withdrawal documents. 2 hours later, Dara and Jisoo walked out of the building with signed agreements, ending all harassment of Void Studio and a promise that Kwon Dae-sung would find other neighborhoods to terrorize. Is it over? Dara asked, as they stood on the sidewalk outside, soul glittering around them like victory. It's over. Good. She turned to face him, suddenly aware that they were standing very close together. Thank you. For what? For letting me be your partner, instead of your charity case. You were never a charity case. You were always a partner. It just took me a while to understand how to act like one. The words hung between them, loaded with everything they'd been through and everything they were choosing together. So what happens now? Now we build Void Studio into something incredible. Together? Together. Jisoo stepped closer, and for a moment the space between them felt full of possibility. Dara? Yes? Would you like to have dinner? Not business dinner. Not strategic dinner. Just dinner because I enjoy your company, and you make me laugh, and I want to spend time with you. Yes. Even though everyone will assume it means something? It does mean something. What does it mean? It means we're two people who found each other in a cafe and decided to build something beautiful together. I like that meaning. Me too. 6 months later, Void Studio held its opening celebration in the Seongsu-dong space. The renovation had taken longer than expected, cost more than budgeted, and resulted in something better than either of them had imagined. Dara stood in her new flagship studio, surrounded by friends and colleagues and buyers from around the world, watching people discover her work in a space designed to show it properly. You did it, Afua said, appearing beside her with champagne and tears in her eyes. You actually did it. We did it. Where's your business partner? Dara looked around the crowded space until she spotted Jisoo by the window, talking quietly with Ji Yeonhee about something that was making them both laugh, being charming to fashion editors. And later? Later, we're going to dinner, just the two of us, like normal people who are building something together. Something like what? Dara smiled, watching Jisoo catch her eye across the room and smile back like she was the best thing in any space they happened to share. Something honest. The party continued around them, full of people celebrating new beginnings and beautiful work and the kind of partnerships that made everything possible. Outside the windows, Seoul stretched away in all directions, full of creative people building dreams in a city that had room for voices from everywhere. And in the center of it all, two people who had found each other in a cafe continued the conversation that had started with 40 minutes of patient silence and grown into something neither of them had expected, but both of them had chosen. Ready to go home? Jisoo asked, appearing beside her as the last guests filtered out into the Seoul night. Ready. Your place or mine? Ours. I like the sound of that. Me too. They turned off the lights in Void Studio together, leaving behind a space full of beautiful things they'd built through partnership and patience, and the kind of love that made everything possible. Beautiful people, we've reached the end of this incredible journey. I hope you felt all the butterflies and got completely lost in Dara and Jisoo's love story. If this romance gave you all the feels, please hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing K-drama stories that will make your heart flutter. And let me know in the comments what part made you feel the most butterflies, because I love hearing from you amazing viewers. Thank you for coming on this beautiful journey with me.